At 2:07 a.m., the pager rang. It wasn't loud. It never was. Just a thin, insistent vibration against Noah Ellis's hip, like a pulse that refused to be ignored. He felt it before he heard it, felt it the way sailors feel a change in wind before the sky admits anything has shifted. He stopped mid-step in the ICU corridor, mop handle resting against his shoulder, the floor beneath him still wet and shining like a held breath. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere far down the hall, a monitor chirped and corrected itself, the sound sharp enough to scrape the inside of his skull. Noah checked the pager once. He always did, even though he knew what it would say. Zone C, respiratory drop. He didn't swear. He didn't run. Panic wasted oxygen, and oxygen was the one thing nobody here had to spare. He turned the corner and walked fast. Zone C was the free care wing, the part of the hospital that smelled faintly different from the rest. Less antiseptic, more human. Old plastic, reheated soup. Fear that had learned to be quiet. The doors were closed but not locked. They were never locked. Locks suggested importance. Noah slipped inside and the temperature changed immediately. Colder, machines working harder to compensate for what they'd been denied. He could hear it in the airflow, an uneven whistle, like a lung trying to remember how to expand. A nurse looked up from the desk, eyes already tired. "It dropped again," she said, as if reporting weather. "Maintenance hasn't answered." "They won't," Noah said gently, already moving. He didn't need to be told which bed. He followed the sound, an irregular rasp that scraped its way out of a small chest, then failed to return. The child was maybe 8, maybe younger. The chart said 7. The chart was wrong about a lot of things. The ventilator blinked amber. Noah crouched and laid his hand on the machine, not to comfort it, but to listen. Machines told the truth if you asked the right way. This one was tired. Its regulator lagged. It had been recalibrated too many times, pushed beyond the kindness of its design. "Pressure's falling," the nurse said. "Protocol says—" "I know," Noah said. "Protocol said, wait. Protocol said document. Protocol said the part would arrive with the morning delivery, if the requisition went through, if the budget still allowed it, if the child lasted that long." Noah reached into his pocket and felt the familiar edge of the folded keycard he was not supposed to have. He didn't look at the camera above the door. Cameras didn't need acknowledgement. They only needed footage. He stood and crossed the room to the cabinet marked, "Restricted, Biomed Only." The lock beeped red. Noah exhaled once and slid the keycard through again, slower this time, angling it the way the reader preferred. The light blinked green. The nurse didn't say anything. She turned her back and pretended to read a chart she already knew by heart. Inside the cabinet, the air smelled like dust and metal, and a promise someone had forgotten to keep. Noah's hands moved quickly, choosing without hesitation. A refurbished regulator, not approved. Tested, yes. Logged, no. He replaced the failing component in less than 30 seconds. He had practiced this with his eyes closed, in the dark, in the narrow hours when practice was the only thing that kept grief from speaking too loudly. He powered the machine back on. For a long, unbearable moment, nothing happened. Then the ventilator caught. The rhythm smoothed, the rasp softened. The child's chest rose, fell, rose again. The nurse sagged against the counter, relief loosening her spine. Noah watched the monitor until the numbers steadied into something that resembled mercy. "Thank you," she whispered. Noah nodded once, already stepping back. Gratitude was dangerous. It tempted people to ask questions. He turned and froze. The bed beside it was quiet. Too quiet. The monitor there was dark, its screen reflecting the ceiling lights like a blind eye. The sheet had been pulled up, carefully, respectfully, the way professionals were trained to pull sheets when there was nothing left to fix. A doctor stood at the foot of the bed, hands folded, gaze lowered. She didn't look at Noah. She didn't have to. Noah felt the world narrow to a thin, unbearable point. He counted to 3. He always did. 1 for the breath he'd saved, 1 for the breath he hadn't, 1 for the space between. The pager buzzed again, a brief aftershock, then went still. From the doorway, a small voice whispered, "Daddy?" Noah turned. Maya stood there in her oversized hoodie, the sleeves covering her hands, dark hair flattened on one side where sleep had pressed it into shape. She clutched her stuffed rabbit under one arm, its ear mended with blue thread. Her eyes moved not to him, but to the machines. She listened, her face tightened. "It stopped," she said. "Yes," Noah replied softly. She swallowed. "The other one didn't." "No." She nodded, solemn, absorbing this the way children absorbed truths adults spent their lives avoiding. She crossed the room and took his hand. Her fingers were cold. "I counted," she said. "The beeps." "I know." They stood there together, janitor and child, in a room full of equipment that cost more than both their lives combined. Noah squeezed her hand once and let go. Outside, somewhere in the hospital's upper floors, a woman named Amelia Rowan stared at a dashboard glowing blue and green and red. She saw a line item marked "Unauthorized Access" and frowned. Down here, Noah wiped his hands on his pants, careful not to smear oil onto anything clean. He replaced the cabinet keycard where it belonged and picked up his mop. The floor still needed drying. The hospital would wake in a few hours, and no one liked stepping into a puddle they hadn't planned for. As he pushed the mop forward, Noah felt the pager against his hip, silent now, heavy with the knowledge that it would ring again, and when it did, he would answer. Morning arrived without ceremony. The sun crept into the hospital through narrow windows, meant more for regulation than beauty, pale light settling onto linoleum floors and stainless steel railings like an afterthought. Shift changes happened, charts were signed, coffee was poured and forgotten. The night, with all its quiet bargains and borrowed breaths, retreated into paperwork. Noah Ellis finished mopping Zone C just as the day staff began to arrive. They walked past him the way people always did, eyes forward, minds already full. Doctors spoke in low, efficient tones. Nurses compared schedules and weekend plans. No one asked who had been here at 2 a.m. or why the ventilator logs showed a brief anomaly that corrected itself before alarms escalated. Hospitals were excellent at swallowing inconvenient details. Noah returned the mop to the utility closet, wrung it out carefully, and hung it on its hook. He washed his hands twice, once for hygiene, once for habit. The water ran warm for exactly 20 seconds before cooling again. He watched the grime spiral down the drain and wondered, not for the first time, how much of the night would follow it. At the end of the corridor, Dr. Helen Park stood staring at a wall-mounted screen that listed bed availability in stark green and red. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly, without turning. "I know," Noah replied. "You put me in an impossible position." He waited. Helen had been trained not to speak unless she was ready to finish a thought. She sighed. "If someone audits the cabinet logs—" "They won't," Noah said gently. "Not unless they're already looking." That earned him a glance. Helen's eyes were bloodshot, her hair pulled back too tightly, as if keeping everything in place required constant pressure. "And if they are? Then they already decided what they want to find." Helen looked away. "The other bed," she said. "We did everything by the book." Noah nodded. He didn't argue with books. Books didn't feel guilt. A nurse passed by pushing a cart stacked with fresh linens. The wheels squeaked. Life went on with the kind of momentum that made stopping feel rude. "Go home," Helen said, "before someone asks questions." Noah checked his watch. 7:14 a.m. Maya's school started at 8. "I will," he said. "After." Helen didn't ask after what. She knew. Noah walked to the small room near the end of the wing, the one that used to be a storage space before budget cuts consolidated everything that didn't generate revenue. A cot had been wedged against the wall. A folding chair sat beside it. A child's backpack leaned in the corner, pink zipper broken, repaired with a safety pin. Maya was awake, sitting cross-legged on the cot, coloring carefully within the lines of a worksheet that had been printed too many times. She looked up when he entered. "Did they fix it?" she asked. "Yes." "The one that stopped?" Noah hesitated. He had learned to pause before answering questions that shaped the world. "No," he said, "not that one." She nodded slowly. "I thought so." He sat beside her and reached for the rabbit, straightening its stitched ear. "You should get dressed." "I already did," she said, proud. "I used the blue shirt, the one that doesn't itch." He smiled despite himself. "Good choice." As they walked toward the exit, they passed a television mounted high on the wall. A news segment played silently beneath a scrolling ticker about quarterly earnings and healthcare stocks. Noah didn't look up. Numbers on screens had never told him the truth he needed. Outside, the air was sharp and clean, winter still holding the city in a loose grip. Noah zipped Maya's jacket and took her hand. They walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, standing among commuters who smelled like aftershave and impatience. "Daddy," Maya said, swinging their joined hands slightly, "if the machine stops again tonight, I'll be there," he said, too quickly. She studied his face. "Children notice speed. You always are." The bus arrived. They rode in silence, Maya leaning against his arm, Noah watching the city blur past. A billboard advertised the hospital network with smiling faces and a slogan about care without compromise. He dropped Maya off at school and waited until she was safely inside before heading back the way he came. By the time he returned to the hospital, the building had fully woken. Administrators moved through hallways with tablets and clipped smiles. Meetings were already in progress. Somewhere upstairs, coffee was being refilled for people who would never see Zone C. Noah signed back in and collected his supplies. He worked the public areas first: lobbies, corridors, waiting rooms, places where grief sat openly, allowed to breathe. He wiped down chairs and counters and listened to the murmur of families negotiating hope. In an office on the 42nd floor, Amelia Rowan stood behind a wall of glass and studied her screen. The dashboard had updated overnight. She frowned at a small red flag beside a maintenance log. Unauthorized access, Biomed Cabinet C12. The timestamp read 0207. Amelia tapped the entry, pulling up a brief report. No escalation, no incident ticket. Just a note. System stabilized. Her jaw tightened. She disliked anomalies. They suggested inefficiency, or worse, narrative gaps. The board had made its expectations clear in the last meeting. Cost reductions, risk mitigation, clean lines. "Who was on shift?" she asked her assistant without looking up. Mara Chen glanced at her tablet. "Custodial, mostly. Biomed skeleton crew. No official calls logged." Amelia's gaze returned to the screen. "Find the name attached to that access." Mara hesitated. "It might be—" "I want the name," Amelia said calmly. Downstairs, Noah scrubbed a stain from the floor outside Zone C that refused to disappear. He applied more pressure, his shoulders burning slightly. It came up eventually, leaving the surface spotless. By noon, an email circulated quietly among operations staff. Subject line: Internal Review, Access Logs. Noah read it twice, then folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. The pager at his hip remained silent. He finished his shift, picked up Maya from school, and walked home with the weight of the day pressing gently but insistently against his back. That evening, as he tucked her into bed, she asked if the machines would be loud tonight. "Some of them," he said, "but not the ones you need to worry about." She smiled sleepily and closed her eyes. Noah stood in the doorway a moment longer, listening to her breathe, steady and unassisted. He reached into his pocket and touched the pager, feeling its familiar shape. It would ring again, he knew that. And when it did, someone else would be listening too. Noah had learned the language of machines long before he learned how to survive silence. In another life, one that felt increasingly like a story told by someone else, he had stood in bright laboratories with whiteboards full of equations and half-drunk cups of coffee, growing cold beside oscilloscopes. He had argued about tolerances, about failure modes, about how much redundancy was enough to keep people alive when everything else went wrong. Back then, the machines had names, models, serial numbers that could be traced and replaced. Now, they had only sounds. That evening, Noah and Maya ate dinner at the small table in their apartment, the radiator ticking softly behind them. He had cooked pasta with whatever vegetables were left in the fridge. Maya twirled her fork carefully, counting turns the way she counted everything. 3, she said, satisfied. "That's enough." "You sure?" Noah asked. She nodded. "Too much makes my stomach loud." He smiled faintly and cleared the dishes. As he washed them, he listened, not to the water, but beyond it. The city carried sound differently at night. Sirens were rarer, footsteps more honest. You could tell who was in a hurry and who was just lost. Maya climbed onto the couch with her rabbit and pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Daddy," she said, her voice already softening with sleep, "can you tell me again?" He dried his hands slowly. "Which part?" "The beeps." He sat beside her. This ritual had begun without either of them noticing, the way most necessary things did. "Okay," he said. "The long, steady beep means the machine is doing what it's supposed to do." "And the short ones?" she asked. "That means it's correcting something." She frowned. "And when it stops?" Noah didn't answer right away. He brushed a thumb over the worn fabric of the rabbit's ear, tracing the blue stitches. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "it means the machine can't help anymore." Maya nodded, absorbing this with the seriousness of a child who had been forced to grow fluent in fear. "But it doesn't always mean—" "No," Noah said gently. "It doesn't always mean that." She relaxed a little. "Okay." She fell asleep quickly after that, breath deep and even. Noah watched her chest rise and fall until his own breathing matched hers. Then he stood and prepared for work. The hospital at night felt like a different organism entirely. The sharp edges of daytime softened. Hallways stretched longer. Every sound carried farther. Noah signed in at 11:42 p.m., clipped his badge to his shirt, and collected his supplies. Zone C was quieter than usual. Dr. Park stood at the nurse's station, reviewing charts with an intensity that bordered on defiance. When she saw Noah, her expression shifted, something like relief mixed with guilt. "2 new admissions," she said, "both respiratory, 1 pediatric." Noah nodded. "Which bed?" She told him. He memorized it immediately. As he worked, he felt the familiar pull of memory, the way certain rooms triggered it whether he wanted them to or not. The smell of disinfectant, the rhythm of ventilators breathing for people who couldn't, the way hope condensed into numbers on a screen. Lena had died in a room like this. Not this one exactly, but close enough that his body couldn't tell the difference. She had been laughing earlier that day, joking with a nurse about the bad coffee. By midnight, her lungs had begun to fail. Noah had watched the monitor, watched the numbers drift into unsafe territory, and waited for help that arrived too late. The machine had been old, approved, logged, still insufficient. Afterward, there had been forms, apologies, explanations that sounded reasonable until you tried to breathe through them. Noah pushed the memory aside and focused on the present. He checked the equipment, listening with the practiced ear of someone who knew when a machine was asking for attention. One ventilator wheezed faintly on exhale. He made a note of it. Another ran hot. He adjusted airflow and moved on. At 1:58 a.m., the pager vibrated once. A warning, not a call. Noah slowed his steps. At 2:07, it rang. He was already moving. The pediatric bed was smaller than the others, its rails raised high. The child, 6 maybe, struggled against the mask, eyes wide and unfocused. The machine's rhythm had slipped into a stutter, each breath slightly delayed. Noah knelt and placed his hand on the casing, feeling the uneven vibration. He closed his eyes for half a second and listened. "Pressure lag," he murmured. Dr. Park hovered nearby. "Maintenance is—" "Not coming," Noah finished. He opened the cabinet again. This time his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from familiarity. He replaced the component, recalibrated the sensor, and restarted the system. The stutter smoothed. The child's shoulders relaxed. A sound escaped Dr. Park that might have been a prayer. Noah stepped back, wiping his hands. As he did, his gaze flicked to the bed across the room. An elderly man lay there, chest rising shallowly beneath a blanket too thin for the season. His monitor blinked amber, then red. Noah looked at Dr. Park. She shook her head once. "No," she said. "We don't have clearance." Noah glanced at the clock. 2:11 a.m. He could fix it. He knew he could. The parts were there. The problem was simple, but clearance was a door that only opened one way. The man's breathing slowed. The monitor chimed, then went silent. Noah stood very still. Afterward, the paperwork came. Death always brought paperwork. Noah signed nothing, but he watched as others did. The bed was prepared. The room reset. Another space made available. By the time his shift ended, the sky was beginning to lighten at the edges. In her penthouse apartment overlooking the lake, Amelia Rowan stood barefoot in her kitchen, coffee untouched on the counter. She had not slept. On her tablet, the access logs glowed with quiet insistence. 2 entries from the same cabinet, same time window, same badge ID. Noah Ellis, custodial. She stared at the name. "Who are you?" she whispered, not unkindly. Down below, Noah walked home with Maya's backpack slung over his shoulder, the pager heavy at his hip. He listened to the city waking, to the distant hum of traffic, to the quiet inside his own chest. Some sounds faded, others stayed forever. Amelia Rowan had always trusted numbers. They were clean. They obeyed. They told the truth without needing comfort or permission. Numbers didn't hesitate. didn't remember, didn't wake you at night asking if you'd done the right thing. They lined up neatly on her screens every morning and waited to be interpreted. At 6:12 a.m., she stood in her office, Chicago still dark beneath a low winter sky, and watched the hospital dashboard refresh. Admissions, discharges, equipment uptime, cost per bed. Everything appeared normal. That was the problem. She zoomed in on the maintenance panel and isolated the alert that had followed her into the early hours like an unanswered question. Unauthorized access. Biomed Cabinet C12. The timestamp glowed faintly. 0207. Run the log again, she said. Mara Chen, her assistant, did not ask why. She had learned when curiosity was a liability. Same result, Mara replied after a moment. Access, brief stabilization, no escalation ticket. Who approved the stabilization? Amelia asked. No one, Mara said carefully, which means either the system corrected itself or someone did it quietly. Amelia's jaw tightened. Quiet fixes made boards nervous. Quiet fixes implied systems that depended on people rather than policy. Pull personnel, Amelia said. Night shift only. Everyone who had access to that wing. Mara's fingers moved. Doctors, nurses, custodial, skeleton biomed. One name repeats. Amelia already knew it would. Noah Ellis, Mara said. Custodial, Amelia echoed. The word tasted faintly wrong. She brought up his profile. Minimal salary, no degree listed. Employment history sparse and unremarkable. Night shift for 14 months. No disciplinary actions, no commendations, invisible. Why would a janitor be anywhere near a biomed cabinet? Amelia asked. Mara hesitated. He's been flagged before, nothing conclusive, just proximity. Proximity to what? To problems, Mara said. Amelia closed the profile and leaned back, fingers steepled. She had heard this pattern before. Something broke. Someone nearby became suspicious. It was efficient. It saved time. Still, something nagged at her. Any incidents overnight? Amelia asked. Mara checked again. One death in Zone C, elderly male, respiratory failure, no escalation beyond protocol. Protocol. Amelia hated that word when it was used like a shield. Was the equipment involved? She asked. The report says no actionable fault, Mara replied. Equipment functioning within acceptable margins. Amelia stood and crossed to the window. Below her, the city stretched awake, traffic threading through streets like veins filling with blood. Hospitals were supposed to be places where margins bent toward mercy. Schedule a visit, Amelia said quietly. Mara looked up. A site visit? Tonight, Amelia confirmed, unannounced. That afternoon, Noah picked Maya up from school beneath a sky that threatened snow. She skipped beside him, chattering about a spelling test and a classmate who cried when her eraser broke. Daddy, she said suddenly, why do some people get fixed and some don't? Noah slowed his steps. What do you mean? At school, she said. When the heater stopped, they fixed it right away. But at the hospital, he stopped fully this time. He crouched to her height, his knees aching slightly. Different places have different rules, he said. That doesn't seem fair, Maya said. No, Noah agreed. It isn't. She considered that, then nodded. Okay. At home, Noah cooked dinner and helped Maya with homework. He packed his bag for the night shift with the same care he used for everything else, checking tools, counting spare parts, making sure nothing rattled. The pager lay on the counter, silent, patient. He clipped it to his belt as the clock edged toward 11. Amelia arrived at the hospital just before midnight. She didn't announce herself. She never did. Announcements change behavior. She preferred truth. The lobby was quieter than she expected, polished floors reflecting dim lights. A security guard nodded, recognizing her immediately, and she waved him off. Don't call ahead, she said. I'm observing. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, descending into the building's core. Each level grew cooler, the air carrying hints of disinfectant and something older, metal, wear, fatigue. By the time she reached Zone C, she felt it, the difference. This wing did not hum with confidence. It breathed, shallow and careful, like a place that knew it could be forgotten. She stood back, watching. A janitor moved methodically down the corridor, mop gliding with quiet precision. Tall, broad-shouldered. His posture was relaxed but alert, as if he listened even while he worked. Noah Ellis. Amelia watched him check a door, adjust a thermostat, pause briefly near a cabinet he did not open. He moved like someone who knew exactly what he was not allowed to touch, and when. She followed at a distance. At 1:58 a.m., she felt her phone vibrate with an internal alert. She ignored it and kept her eyes on Noah. At 2:07, she saw it. The pager at his hip buzzed. Noah stopped mid-step, his expression shifting, not to fear, not to surprise, but to focus. He turned without hesitation and headed toward the ICU rooms. Amelia's pulse quickened. She followed. From the doorway, she watched him kneel beside a pediatric bed, hands steady, movements practiced. She saw the nurse step aside. She saw the cabinet open. She saw the machine flicker, then stabilize. She also saw the bed beside it. The stillness there was unmistakable. Amelia's breath caught. This was not theft. This was not sabotage. This was something far more dangerous. She stepped back into the shadows as Noah exited the room, his face composed but his shoulders heavy, as if carrying a weight he had learned never to set down. He walked past her without seeing her, or perhaps he did, and simply chose not to acknowledge it. Amelia remained where she was long after he disappeared down the corridor. The dashboard upstairs would show a stabilized system and a logged death within protocol. The numbers would look clean. But she had seen the space between them, and for the first time since she'd taken the role of CEO, Amelia Rowan understood that if she kept trusting only what the numbers said, she would miss the truth entirely. Amelia did not follow Noah immediately. She stayed in the corridor, just beyond the ICU doors, letting the quiet settle back into place. The machines resumed their careful breathing. A nurse whispered instructions to a colleague. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled, then faded. The hospital closed ranks around the moment, absorbing it the way it absorbed everything else. Amelia pressed her palm lightly against the cool wall and tried to steady her breathing. She had watched mergers implode and markets collapse without flinching, but this space between one life saved and another lost refused to be categorized. She waited until Noah had gone, then stepped inside. Dr. Helen Park looked up, surprise flickering across her face before professional neutrality slid back into place. "Can I help you?" she asked. Amelia glanced at the pediatric bed. The child slept, chest rising in a smooth, even rhythm. Relief lingered in the room like a held note. "And the other patient?" Amelia asked. Helen's mouth tightened. "We followed protocol." Amelia nodded once. "Of course you did." She didn't ask more. She had learned that questions asked too soon made people defensive, and she did not want defense. She wanted truth. Outside, she found a bench and sat, coat still on, hands clasped loosely in her lap. She watched the corridor the way a hunter watched a clearing, not for movement, but for patterns. Noah returned 20 minutes later, mop in hand, his pace unhurried. He did not look toward her. He did not need to. Amelia stood as he passed. "Noah Ellis," she said quietly. He stopped. The pause was brief, almost imperceptible, but it existed. He turned and met her gaze with a calm that suggested he had been expecting this moment longer than she had. "Yes," he said. "I'm Amelia Rowan," she said. "I'd like to ask you a few questions." Noah glanced past her, down the corridor toward Zone C, then back to her. "About the floor," he asked mildly. Amelia held his gaze. "About the night." Something flickered in his eyes, not fear, not guilt, calculation. Not for escape, but for consequence. "There are rules," he said. "I know," Amelia replied. "I helped write some of them." He nodded once. "Then you know what the answers cost." She gestured to the bench. "Sit." He considered her for a moment longer, then set the mop against the wall and sat, hands resting on his knees. Amelia sat opposite him, leaving space between them. She had learned long ago that space invited honesty. "Why were you in the biomed cabinet at 2:07 a.m.? she asked. Noah didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands, then up again. "Because a machine was failing," he said. "And because waiting would have made that failure permanent." "That's not an approved answer," Amelia said. "No," Noah agreed. "It's a true one." She inhaled slowly. "You understand the risk you took." "I do." "And you understand that someone died in that room." His jaw tightened. "Yes." "Could you have fixed that machine too?" The question landed between them like a dropped instrument. "Yes," Noah said quietly. Amelia felt the words strike somewhere deep and tender. Then why didn't you? Because I wasn't allowed, he replied. And because the people who decide what's allowed had already decided. She leaned forward slightly. Decided what? That some lives are worth the paperwork, Noah said, and some aren't. The pager at his hip vibrated faintly. An internal check, not a call. He ignored it. You violated protocol, Amelia said. Yes. You exposed the hospital to liability. Yes. You saved a child. Yes. The three words hung there, stark and unadorned. Do you do this often? Amelia asked. Noah met her gaze. Often enough. How long? 14 months, he said, since my daughter learned the difference between a warning beep and a last one. Amelia's throat tightened. Your daughter was here tonight. She usually is. You bring a child into a hospital at night? I bring my child where I work, Noah corrected. I don't leave her alone. Amelia glanced toward the small room at the end of the wing, the light beneath the door faint but steady. She listens to the machines, she said. Yes. She understands them. She has to. They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital breathing around them. I need you to understand something, Amelia said at last. The board is watching this wing, costs, access logs, deviations. You are convenient, Noah finished. She did not deny it. If you continue, she said carefully, you will be found. He nodded. I already am. And if I stop you? Noah's eyes did not waver. Then people will die quietly, and no one will break any rules. The pager buzzed again. This time, it did not stop. Noah rose to his feet, instinct overriding conversation. Zone C, he said. Respiratory dip. Amelia stood as well. I'm coming. You shouldn't. I know. They moved together down the corridor. Inside the ICU, the air felt heavier, charged. The pediatric monitor blinked steady. Another bed, new admission, flickered amber. Noah moved with practiced efficiency. Amelia watched closely this time, not as an observer, but as a witness. She saw how he listened, how he chose, how he calibrated risk against seconds. The machine stabilized. A nurse exhaled sharply. Thank God. Noah stepped back, already scanning the room. His gaze snagged on the bed near the window. An adult patient, breathing shallowly, numbers hovering at the edge of a danger. Amelia followed his line of sight. If you touch that machine, she said softly, they'll come for you. He didn't look at her. If I don't, he said, they'll come for him. The monitor chirped, warning escalating. Amelia felt the weight of the choice press into her chest, heavier than any decision she'd made in a boardroom. She thought of dashboards and reports and how clean they would look in the morning. She thought of the space between lives. Do it, she said. Noah turned, surprise flashing briefly across his face. You'll take responsibility? Yes. He moved immediately. The adjustment was quick, precise. The numbers climbed back into safer territory, inch by inch. When it was done, the room exhaled. Amelia stood very still, her heart pounding. She knew exactly what she had just done. Outside, the pager finally fell silent. Noah wiped his hands and looked at her, something like gratitude and something like sorrow mingling in his eyes. You understand now, he said. I understand, Amelia replied. And I can't unsee it. Down the hall, footsteps approached. Security, drawn by alerts that had finally crossed an invisible threshold. Amelia straightened, smoothing her coat, already preparing for what came next. Because once you stepped into that space between lives, you didn't get to pretend you'd never been there. Security arrived without urgency. That was the first thing Amelia noticed as the two guards approached. No running, no raised voices, just the smooth, practiced gait of men who believed the system would explain itself if given enough time. One of them glanced at a tablet, the other scanned the corridor, saw her eyes pausing briefly on Noah, then moving on. Ms. Rowan, the taller guard said, surprised but composed. We didn't expect— I know, Amelia replied. That's why I'm here. The guard hesitated, recalibrating. Authority had a way of doing that to people. We had an alert. Unauthorized access. Multiple. Amelia nodded. Yes. The pause that followed was heavier this time. Noah stood slightly behind her, hands relaxed at his sides. He had learned long ago that tension invited scrutiny. Calm suggested permission. "Sir," the second guard said, turning to Noah, "we're going to need you to come with us." "No," Amelia said. The word landed softly but with unmistakable finality. The guards exchanged a glance. "Ma'am, protocol, I am protocol," Amelia said evenly. "For the next hour, any access he requires is authorized under my clearance." The taller guard swallowed. "That's irregular." "So is letting people die because a form hasn't been approved," Amelia replied. Down the hall, a nurse pretended not to listen. The machines continued their patient breathing, indifferent to authority. "Log it," Amelia said, "or don't. Either way, this is happening." The guard stepped aside, not in agreement, Amelia could tell, but in recognition of hierarchy. When they left, the corridor felt strangely smaller, as if the walls had shifted inward. Noah turned to her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Amelia said, "I did." They stood there for a moment, the adrenaline of the near confrontation draining away, leaving behind something quieter and more dangerous: consequence. "You should go," Noah said. "It'll be worse if you're seen again." Amelia nodded. "I know." She took one last look at the ICU, at the child sleeping, at the adult whose numbers now held steady. She committed the image to memory the way one memorized a map before crossing unfamiliar ground. As she walked back toward the elevators, her phone vibrated. Board call. Urgent. She didn't answer. By morning, the story had already begun to shift. Emails circulated with careful wording. Internal review underway. Temporary suspension pending investigation. Noah read the message twice in the break room, the coffee in his hand cooling unnoticed. Dr. Park stood beside him, arms folded tightly. "They're putting it on you," she said. "I know," Noah replied. "They're saying you staged faults to justify access." He nodded again. The lie was clever. Efficient. It explained too much. "What about her?" Helen asked quietly. Noah thought of Amelia's steady voice in the corridor, the way she had said "I am protocol" without raising it. "She'll do what she thinks is right," he said. "That's all anyone ever does." By noon, his badge no longer opened the staff doors. Noah signed out, collected his things, and walked to the small room at the end of the wing. Maya sat on the cot, swinging her legs, rabbit tucked under her arm. "Why are you early?" she asked. He crouched in front of her. "We're taking today off." Her eyes widened. "Like a holiday?" "Like a pause," he said. She studied his face, searching for something. "Did the machines get mad?" Noah smiled faintly. "Something like that." They left the hospital together, passing the front desk without incident. To the outside world, nothing had changed. Ambulances arrived, visitors came and went. The hospital remained open, polished, functioning. At 3:47 p.m., Amelia Rowan finally returned the board's call. She took it standing, office lights off, city stretching behind her in muted gray. "This is a breach of authority," Victor Hale's voice snapped through the speaker. "You overrode security protocols and exposed us to significant legal risk." Amelia listened without interruption. She had learned long ago that letting people speak made them careless. "You authorized an uncredentialed employee to tamper with life support equipment," Victor continued. "There was a death in that wing last night. Do you understand how this looks?" "Yes," Amelia said. "It looks like the truth." Silence followed. "You're emotionally compromised," Victor said finally. "This is exactly why we don't let sentiment dictate operations." "Sentiment didn't dictate anything," Amelia replied. "Time did." "The board has decided," Victor said, voice smoothing into something practiced. "We need a clear corrective action. The janitor will be terminated and referred for investigation. Publicly, quietly, the incident will be closed." Amelia closed her eyes. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Victor exhaled, impatient. "Then you will be removed, and the decision will stand anyway." Amelia opened her eyes and looked at her reflection in the dark glass. She saw herself clearly for the first time in years. Not the CEO, not the daughter of a hard man, not the woman who trusted dashboards more than faces. She saw the person who had stood in the space between lives. "Then remove me," she said. "What?" "I won't sign," Amelia said calmly. "I won't authorize his termination, and I won't allow the report to be closed." You're choosing him over the company, Victor said, incredulous. No, Amelia corrected. I'm choosing people over a lie. The call ended abruptly. By evening, the news reached Noah through a coworker's hurried text. They're suspending her. Board vote tomorrow. Noah sat at the kitchen table, phone resting between his hands. Maya colored beside him, humming softly. She did it, he murmured. Maya looked up. Did what? He smiled, a mix of pride and worry tightening his chest. She listened. That night, the pager lay on the counter, dark and silent. Noah did not clip it to his belt. At the hospital, a machine alarm went unanswered for 12 minutes before maintenance arrived. No one broke protocol. And somewhere in the city, Amelia Rowan packed a small bag, knowing exactly what she was about to lose. The pager did not ring. Noah noticed the absence before he noticed anything else. It sat on the kitchen counter where he had left it, black and inert, its small screen dark. He poured coffee, waited for the familiar vibration to buzz against the quiet morning, and felt nothing. Silence, he had learned, could be louder than alarms. Maya ate her cereal slowly, counting each spoonful. You forgot it, she said, nodding toward the pager. No, Noah replied. I didn't. She looked at him, her brow knitting. Is that bad? It's different, he said. He chose his words carefully, as he always did now. Different isn't always bad. She accepted this with a nod, but her eyes drifted back to the counter more than once, as if the pager were a small animal that might move if watched closely. They walked to school under a low, gray sky. The city felt oddly hollow, as if something essential had been removed without ceremony. When Noah hugged Maya goodbye, she held on a beat longer than usual. If the machines need you, she said softly, they can call the hospital. Noah swallowed. Yes, he said, they can. But they didn't. By noon, the hospital's free care wing felt the difference. Dr. Helen Park stood at the nurse's station, fingers hovering uselessly over the phone. Maintenance had been called twice already. They were backed up. Budget cuts had thinned their ranks. The biomed team had been consolidated to daylight hours only, a decision justified on paper by graphs and averages. A patient in bed C14 coughed, the sound wet and worrying. Helen walked to the room and checked the monitor. The numbers jittered, then settled just shy of safe. She adjusted oxygen flow manually, her movements precise but limited by what her role allowed. Where's Noah? A nurse whispered. Helen didn't answer. At 2:07 p.m., the machine in C14 chimed. Once, then again, a warning escalating too quickly. Helen's heart rate spiked in response. She paged maintenance again. No answer. She made the call she was not supposed to make. Emergency override, she said into the phone, voice steady. I need biomed now. The response was polite and devastating. Ma'am, that requires executive authorization. Helen closed her eyes. By the time maintenance arrived, breathless, apologetic, the patient's breathing had deteriorated beyond recovery. They did everything right. They followed every step. They documented meticulously. The machine was repaired within minutes. The patient did not wake. Noah spent the afternoon cleaning the apartment, not because it needed it, but because his hands needed something to do. He scrubbed surfaces already clean, rearranged tools that had no immediate use. The pager remained where it was. At 5:42 p.m., his phone rang. He recognized the number immediately. Dr. Park, he answered. There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to carry meaning. We lost one, she said quietly. Noah sat down. I'm sorry, he said. The words felt insufficient, but they were the only ones that fit. You would have fixed it, Helen said. It wasn't an accusation, it was a statement of fact. Yes, Noah replied. Another pause. They did everything by the book, she added, as if trying to convince herself. I know, Noah said again. He hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Maya came out of her room and leaned against him, her small body fitting into the curve of his side, as if she had always belonged there. Daddy, she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Did someone's machine stop? Yes. Did anyone help it? They tried. She nodded, absorbing this in the quiet way she did, when there were no right questions left. I don't like nights without beeps, she said. No, Noah agreed. Neither do I. Across the city, Amelia Rowan sat on the floor of her apartment with her back against the couch, the lights still off. Her phone lay face down beside her, a silent witness to the messages she had not answered. She replayed the corridor in her mind, the steady hands, the choices made in seconds, the lives balanced against policy. She thought of the words Victor Hale had used, emotionally compromised, and wondered when compassion had become a diagnosis. Her tablet buzzed with an internal update she hadn't disabled. Zone C incident, resolved within protocol. She closed her eyes. Resolved was a word that meant very little in rooms like that. At 8:13 p.m., Amelia stood and crossed to the window. The hospital's lights glowed in the distance, a beacon of competence and order. She knew what the board would say in the morning. She knew how this would end if she let it. She picked up her phone and typed a single message. To Security Ops. Subject: Access authorization effective immediately. Restore Noah Ellis's clearance to Zone C under my authority. Full responsibility assumed. She hit send before she could reconsider. The pager rang at 2:07 a.m. Noah woke instantly, heart pounding, the sound slicing through the apartment like a blade. For a moment, disorientation washed over him. Then instinct took over. He grabbed the pager from the counter and read the message. Zone C, respiratory failure. He didn't hesitate. Maya stirred as he pulled on his jacket. Daddy? I have to go, he said softly. She sat up, eyes already searching his face. You're back? Yes. She nodded, relief flooding her features. Okay. Noah paused at the door, pager warm in his hand. He knew what this meant. He knew what it would cost. He also knew what it would save. When he reached the hospital, security waved him through without comment. Dr. Park met him at the ICU doors, her expression a mix of fear and gratitude. You didn't hear this from me, she said, but thank you. Noah didn't answer. He was already listening. The machine was failing. He fixed it. The patient breathed again. As Noah stepped back, the pager fell silent. Its job done for now. He leaned against the wall, exhaustion washing over him in a wave. This night would not be clean. It would not be safe. But it would not be quiet either. Even so, the pager rang 3 times that night. Not all emergencies were equal, but they all demanded the same thing: presence. Noah moved through Zone C with the familiar economy of someone who no longer wasted motion. He fixed what could be fixed, stabilized what could be stabilized, and stood still when standing still was the only honest response left. By dawn, the hospital felt bruised. Dr. Park leaned against the counter, eyes rimmed red, fingers trembling slightly as she signed the last report. They'll notice, she said quietly. What you did. What she did. They already have, Noah replied. He signed out just after 7 and stepped into the brittle morning air. Snow had begun to fall, fine and relentless, coating the city in white. He walked home slowly, the pager heavier with each step, not because of what it might ask of him next, but because of what it now represented. Choice. At the apartment, Maya was already awake, sitting at the table with her homework spread out, Rabbit propped beside her like a witness. You came back, she said. Yes. Did it work? For tonight, Noah said. She smiled, small and tired. That's good. They ate breakfast in silence. Noah watched Maya trace letters, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. The ordinariness of the moment pressed against him, fragile and precious. He wondered how many mornings like this he had left. At 9:12 a.m., his phone buzzed. Amelia Rowan. He stared at the name longer than necessary before answering. Yes, he said. Are you free this afternoon? Amelia asked. No, Noah replied gently. I'm exhausted. She paused. I deserve that. Yes, he agreed again. Another silence. I need to see you, Amelia said finally. Not at the hospital. Noah exhaled. Why? Because if I don't do this right, she said, I'll do more damage than good. He considered this. Come at noon, he said. You'll have an hour. Amelia arrived without an entourage. She stood in the narrow hallway outside Noah's apartment, coat still on, hair pulled back more loosely than usual. When Noah opened the door, she took in the space quickly. The modest furniture, the tools neatly arranged along one wall, the child's drawings taped to the fridge. Maya peeked out from behind the couch, eyes curious but cautious. This is my daughter, Noah said. I know, Amelia replied softly. She crouched slightly, bringing herself to Maya's level without forcing closeness. Hello. Maya studied her. You're the lady from the hospital. Yes. You gave Daddy the beeper back. Amelia swallowed. I did. Maya nodded once, as if this settled something important. She retreated to her room without another word. Amelia straightened. She's perceptive. She had to be, Noah said. They sat at the small table. Amelia placed a folder between them, but didn't open it. Not yet. You lost a patient yesterday, she said. Yes. And another would have died last night without you. Yes. Amelia closed her eyes briefly. This isn't sustainable, she said. What we're doing now, it's a stopgap. Noah leaned back slightly. Then don't do a stopgap. She met his gaze. I'm suspended, she said. Board vote is in 48 hours. They want a scapegoat. They want you. I know. They'll close Zone C within the month, Amelia continued. Not loudly. They'll call it consolidation, efficiency. Noah didn't respond. He didn't need to. I can't stop that from the inside anymore, Amelia said. Not the way things are. So, what are you offering? Noah asked. She opened the folder at last. Inside were blueprints, not hospital schematics, but something simpler. A converted outpatient building, insulated rooms, modern equipment, a small ICU wing properly funded. A pilot, Amelia said. Independent. Off the main system. A place where protocols serve patients, not margins. Noah stared at the pages. This costs money. Yes. And power. Yes. And you're willing to give both. I already have, Amelia said quietly. That's why I'm here. Noah closed the folder. You don't get to buy absolution. I know, she said. That's not what this is. Then what is it? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady but unguarded. It's staying, she said, even when it costs me everything else. Noah studied her face, looking for the familiar signs of retreat, of calculation. He saw none, only resolve and fear. You'll be watched, he said. You'll be blamed. And when this gets hard, it already is, Amelia said. He nodded slowly. I won't be your symbol. I don't want one, she replied. I want a partner. Silence settled between them, heavy and honest. From the hallway, Maya's voice drifted out. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart? If the new place opens, she asked, will the machines still beep? Noah smiled faintly. They will. Okay, Maya said, just not the scary way. Amelia felt something tighten in her chest. Noah opened the folder again, turning a page with care. This won't save everyone, he said. No, Amelia agreed, and someone will still die. Yes, he looked up. Then we tell the truth about that too. She nodded. We do. Outside, snow continued to fall, quiet and relentless. Inside the small apartment, a decision took shape. Not as a victory, not as redemption, but as commitment. They would build something imperfect. They would lose sometimes. They would stay anyway, because staying was the hardest part, finally. The boardroom was colder than the ICU, not in temperature, though the air conditioning hummed with unnecessary insistence, but in intention. The walls were glass, the table polished to a shine that reflected faces back at themselves, distorted just enough to be unkind. Amelia Rowan stood at the head of the table, hands resting lightly on the surface, shoulders squared, posture calm. She had slept for exactly 2 hours. Victor Hale sat 2 seats down, fingers interlaced, expression composed. Around him, the board members settled into their chairs with practiced neutrality. No one looked surprised to see Amelia standing. No one welcomed it either. Let's proceed, the chair said. Ms. Rowan, you're aware of why we're here. Yes, Amelia replied. Because I refuse to close a lie. A murmur rippled through the room, quickly stilled. Victor cleared his throat. This isn't about truth, he said. It's about governance. You authorized unauthorized access. You exposed the organization to catastrophic liability. Amelia nodded. I authorized care. By an uncredentialed janitor, Victor pressed. By a biomedical engineer you ignored because his job title made him convenient, Amelia corrected. Silence fell, heavier this time. Zone C has cost us millions, a board member said. And for what? Marginal outcomes, poor reimbursement, high risk. Amelia tapped the tablet beside her, and the screen behind her lit up. Not with charts, but with a single name. Elias Romero, age 62. He died at 2:14 p.m. 3 days ago, Amelia said. Respiratory failure, equipment delay, everything done by the book. Victor shifted slightly. He waited 12 minutes for maintenance authorization, she continued. 12 minutes longer than his lungs could manage. If Noah Ellis had been on the floor, he would have fixed the machine in under 1. That's speculation, Victor snapped. No, Amelia said. It's history. She swiped again. Logs, timestamps, repair records, a pattern that was no longer subtle once you knew how to look. These deaths are compliant, Amelia said quietly. They're clean, legal, invisible, and they are happening because we decided that care must justify itself in profit before it earns permission. A board member frowned. We can't run a hospital on sentiment. You already are, Amelia replied. You just call it efficiency. Victor leaned forward. This is enough. The decision before us is simple. Either we remove Ms. Rowan for gross misconduct and close this chapter, or we risk the entire enterprise. Amelia breathed once, deeply. She had known this moment would come, had felt it forming since the first night she stood in that corridor. She reached into her bag and placed something on the table, a pager, old, scratched, the screen dark. This rang at 2:07 a.m., Amelia said. Every night for 14 months. And every time it rang, someone lived who would otherwise have died. She looked around the room. Elias Romero didn't have a pager. He had a policy. No one spoke. If you remove me, Amelia said evenly, I won't fight it, but I will not sign an order that pretends his death was unavoidable. Victor scoffed. So you're martyring yourself over one patient? Amelia's eyes hardened. No, she said. I'm refusing to let him be reduced to one. The chair exhaled slowly. Ms. Rowan, this board will not endorse your actions. I didn't ask you to, Amelia said. You'll lose your position. I know. You'll lose your influence. I'm counting on it, she replied. A vote was taken. It was not close. Noah learned the outcome from the news, a short segment between market updates and weather. CEO steps down amid internal policy dispute. No mention of Zone C, no mention of Elias Romero. He turned off the television. Maya sat beside him on the couch, her feet tucked under her. Did the lady get in trouble? She asked. Yes, Noah said. Did she do something bad? Noah thought of the boardroom, the pager, the man whose name would not be remembered. No, he said. She did something honest. Maya nodded, satisfied with the answer. That afternoon, Noah walked back to the hospital, not as staff, not as janitor, but as himself. Dr. Park met him near the entrance, her face drawn, dull. I heard, she said. So did I. They're restructuring, Helen said. Zone C will stay open for now. Too much attention. For now, Noah echoed. She hesitated. I'm sorry about her. Noah shook his head. She knew. As he turned to leave, Helen added softly, Elias's daughter called. She asked if someone could explain what happened. I didn't know what to tell her. Noah stopped. Tell her the truth, he said. That help came too late. And that because of that, we're changing things. Helen nodded, tears brightening her eyes. That night, Noah stood alone in his apartment, pager in hand. It would never ring again, not like before. He placed it carefully in a drawer and closed it. Some losses could not be repaired. Some names would never make it onto dashboards or into speeches. But if they were honest, if they were brave enough to stay with the discomfort, those losses could still mean something. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and relentless. Inside, Noah sat with the knowledge that one man had died so others might live differently. And somewhere in that truth, painful and incomplete, the future began to take shape. The new building did not look like a miracle. That was the first thing Noah noticed. It sat on a quiet side street 3 blocks from the old hospital, a low brick structure that had once housed outpatient offices before budgets moved on. The sign out front was modest. No donor names etched in glass. No slogans about excellence or innovation. Just a simple plaque beside the door. Respiratory care. Walk in. Inside, the air was warm. Not aggressively climate-controlled, not humming with excess, just warm in the way rooms are when they expect people to stay. The machines were new, not flashy, but reliable, maintained. chosen because they failed gracefully, not spectacularly. Noah checked the ICU wing one last time before night rounds. 3 beds occupied, 2 empty, all monitors steady. He glanced at the clock, 2:06 a.m. Maya sat at the nurse's station with her homework spread out, pencil tapping softly. She looked up. "It's almost time," she said. "Yes," Noah replied. "Does the pager still work?" she asked. He reached into his pocket and felt the familiar shape. The pager was older now, its casing worn smooth by a year of quiet use. It no longer belonged to the hospital. It belonged to the night. "It does," he said. At 2:07 it rang. The sound was softer than it used to be, more vibration than alarm. Noah didn't hurry. He walked to bed 2, where a man in his 40s struggled against the mask, fear bright in his eyes. Noah knelt. "I'm here," he said. "Breathe with me." He adjusted the regulator, listening, not just to the machine, but to the man's lungs, to the rhythm trying to find itself again. The numbers climbed slowly, then held. The man exhaled, shoulders sagging. "Thank you," he whispered. Noah nodded once. He had learned not to take thanks personally. Gratitude was a bridge, not a destination. When he stepped back into the corridor, Maya watched him with quiet pride. "It sounded like the good beep," she said. "It was," Noah replied. Dawn crept in an hour later, pale and tentative. Staff arrived. Coffee brewed. Charts were updated. The night handed itself back to the day without argument. At 7:30 a.m., Noah stepped outside to breathe in the cold air. Snow had melted into thin streams along the curb. Spring was coming, slowly, the way real change always did. Footsteps approached behind him. Amelia Rowan stopped a few feet away. She wore no badge now, no tailored coat. Just jeans, boots, and a scarf pulled tight against the wind. Her hair was streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to hide. "You're early," Noah said. "I didn't sleep," Ameliette replied. "Old habit." They stood side by side, watching the city wake. "I spoke with Elias Romero's daughter last week," Amelia said quietly. Noah didn't turn. "How is she?" "She's angry," Amelia said. "She should be, but she's also relieved." She said knowing the truth hurt less than not knowing anything at all. Noah nodded. "Truth does that." Amelia hesitated. "The board offered me a consulting role, quiet, safe, apolitical. And?" Noah asked. "I said no." He glanced at her then. "Why?" She smiled faintly. "Because I finally learned the difference between staying relevant and staying." They stood in companionable silence. Inside, a machine beeped, steady, reassuring. Maya's laughter drifted down the hallway as she argued with a nurse about homework answers. Amelia exhaled. "This place won't save everyone," she said. "No," Noah agreed. "And someday," she added, "someone will die here too." "Yes." "But not quietly," Amelia said. "No," Noah replied, "not quietly." The sun rose fully, warming the brick facade, catching the plaque beside the door. Noah felt the pager in his pocket, silent now, content. He thought of the man who couldn't be saved, of the night without the pager, of the choice that had cost everything and built something smaller, truer, harder to break. At 2:07 a.m., once help came too late. Because of that moment, because they refused to look away when the machine went quiet, help came in time for others, not always, but enough. And in the soft hum of a room where breathing had been returned, not promised, the future did not feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like work, the kind worth doing.